Right, I think I'm live now. Let's invite our guest. On Instagram, you can do it.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
Nice to have you on board.
Same. How are you doing?
Excellent, fine. I'm just checking now where you will see me best because maybe like this, huh? Then I'll go to and sit on the other side because
Sure.
this way it's not so clear, right? Or is it okay? Tell me.
It's a bit foggier, but
Yes, exactly. Then
we
I'll
can
go.
we can see you good anyway. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but I'll go to the other side because I think it's better. Let me see. And you are wet or dry? Because
I dried myself now, thankfully.
how cold was it, by the way?
It wasn't too cold. It's just mostly, it just gets damp and it just
Yes,
gets
yes,
into
yes,
your
yes.
bones.
Yeah, I
But
remember, I was au pair in England, so I know how it is.
yeah, exactly. So I think when I was out, it was about 10 degrees, so it
Uh-huh,
wasn't
that's
too
not
bad.
so bad. That's not so bad. Good, good, good.
Not too bad at all.
Yeah.
Well, we already have some people that have joined us.
Ah,
So if
yeah.
you're in a comfortable spot, I will start with the introductions. Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Lillian. I am the CEO here at Travelusion Tours. And this episode of today is part of our Tour Guide Central series where tour guides from all over the world come together to literally just show you what we do and talk about our profession, which is, I think, sometimes a little bit misunderstood. And today we're going all the way to Ljubljana with Mateja. How are you
Yay!
doing?
Thank you very much, Lily, for inviting me to your channel. This is really awesome.
No, thank you for being here. You're one of my favorite people on Instagram, and
Thank you. You
you
too.
know it's a pleasure to have you on board. So
Mm.
please, for those of the people who may be watching now or later, tell us a bit more about yourself and
Mm.
introduce us to your world.
Yeah, well, as you said, Lily, I am a tourist guide, local guide from Ljubljana, the capital of Slovenia. So, for those of our, let's say, participants who don't know where Slovenia is a tiny country squeezed between Italy, Austria, Hungary, Croatia, and Adriatic Sea. So, it's a tiny dot. If you fly from London, it's around 2 hours and 15 minutes, something like that. I am closer to 60s than to 50s, if somebody is interested in that. Mother of three grown up children. And by heart, I would say always a tourist guide because I think once you start to work as a tourist guide, then you always stay as a tourist guide no matter what happens to you. Don't you think so, Lily?
I am of the opinion, but at the same time, I've known a lot of tourist guides that have stopped being tourist
Mhm.
guides at some point in their
Yeah.
lives,
Hmm.
whether because they got tired of it or circumstances,
Mm.
sometimes it happens.
Mm.
But I am very much of the same opinion. I think you can't sort of help it
Yeah.
sometimes.
It
Stick
grabs
with
you
it,
and it doesn't let you go.
for sure, for sure. It's like a bug, but a good bug.
No, true, true, true. A positive one. I started actually 34, 35 years ago. That was in the period of Yugoslavia, because in those days we had only one college for tourism and hospitality. That was in today's Croatia, in Opatija. And I have to tell you that when I've seen all these British, Germans, Americans coming to Patia, doing the day tours, I was like, I would like to meet those people. I would like to be a part of their story, a part of their vacation time. So then I think I already mentioned to you, since my English was not so good, I mean, it was just like a secondary school. I went to England to be an au pair. So I took care of two darling girls. Shirley and Carol. I spent, I think, 6 or 7 months there, and then I came back home and I passed the exam, and then that's how the career started. So mainly for English and German speaking, and I have to tell you, we had so much work. From March until the end of October, we hardly got any day off, and it was awesome. And then in wintertime, there was time to study. That was quite a great
Well,
continuation. Yeah, yeah.
for sure. No, I mean it is great, and I love that that you sort of one day turned around and was like, wow, all of these people come here, and
Yes,
how do I get to be part of this
yes,
journey?
yeah,
I
true.
think that it is a very strange job that we had.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it, it's
Yeah,
weird. You meet all sorts of strange people from all over the world, and you just never know what's going to happen. So I
exactly.
think it takes a lot of courage and a sense of adventure to say, yeah, I want to meet all of these strangers
Bravo.
and be part of their story and them of my story, right? Because
Yeah,
it's not just the impact we have on them. Every time we meet someone new,
yeah,
they bring something to
true,
our lives.
true,
So
true, true.
I
Not two
think it's
days are the same. Not two tours are the same.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, I
So
agree with you.
I think, and for you as well, I think it, even more courage because you go like, you know what? On top of that, I'm gonna go to England to take care of people, improve my English, and then come back.
Yeah.
That's a lot of commitment. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that,
it's true.
that's
It's true,
amazing.
because when I met really all these tourists, or at the beach, or they were maybe in the city at a coffee shop, and I had a little chat with them, then I actually noticed that I need more conversation because, like being a tourist guide, then you open lots of discussions. For example, today you had this gorgeous tour of Southampton, and you said, "Oh, this is a controversial topic. I need to open," and things like that. So, you really need to have more experience. And I have to tell you that 33 years ago, there were not so many opportunities to practice English because look, now we are connected and I can practice English, but 33 years ago, we hardly had any phone. I still
Yeah,
remember was no phone in our home. So it's a big change. It's a big change.
no, for sure. So even if we put it in context, it's even more impressive because I mean, I'm 30 years old now. I
Mhm.
remember the very early 90s.
Yes.
It resonates a lot with me because my mom also came to work to the UK when I was little, like I was five or something, five or
Hmm.
six,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
she was working doing lots of different jobs. She came with something and then changed her job and whatever, and because my
Hmm.
parents really wanted to live in the UK,
Oh, see.
but my mom didn't speak a word of English before she
Yes.
came, she came
Yes.
here. But again, like she met friends, she
Yeah.
adapted to the
True.
city and she took
True.
that on board
Yeah.
and went back. But originally, she came here to be an air hostess. So
Uh,
again, it's related to tourism. So there's
yeah.
always been a very strong connection with the tourism industry in my
Mm,
family.
mm,
Because then she worked in a hotel, so again, she
mhm,
was facing the public all the time.
mm.
My dad was a receptionist.
Oh,
He speaks several languages, so he's never had a problem with that. But it's always been I've always been very lucky that my parents saw this, right? This world where by
true.
interacting with people you
Yes.
get to do this. And I think that's why I became a tour guide
Yeah,
because
yeah. That was put in
like
your cradle.
exactly
Yeah.
like you, I was like, this is great.
Uh,
Let's
uh,
talk to people. Let's bring people
yeah,
together.
yeah.
Um,
And also, sharing like life experiences. I mean, we tourist guides, we interpret, right, our heritage and so on. But on the other hand, we always get this feedback from the visitors, because we need to interpret, we need to connect with their knowledge. So that means that there is always a conversation with them, and that means that they enrich our lives as well, and that's what I like so much, and that's why I think that our activity is actually very, very positive, because on tours usually we get people who enjoy themselves, right? It's not like in the office that you put papers from one part of the table to the other part, or I mean, now is everything on computer, right? I mean, digitalized, but still, I mean, we are real life people and we meet with people from all around the globe. And this is just amazing. And I think that that's positive part of our job, of our profession, keeps us going. As you said, no matter what, we always come back to this profession. For example, I was for a few years at home as mom, but you know, the moment your children start to walk, you already go and work
You're
because
like,
you would like to meet
yeah,
also other people. Yeah, give me some time off. Yeah.
for sure. For sure. No, I mean, it's like you say, I've always thought this profession was very holistic. I mean,
Mhm.
for me, also being a historian, it's the marrying of
Yeah,
two perfect
true,
conversations together.
true, true.
But the reason why I decided this was the right way for me was because, academics, historians, don't
Yeah,
have these type of conversations with
no,
people. They are very
exactly,
separatists.
exactly.
Well, my perspective has always been like, well, history is everybody. So
It's
why are
everybody.
we
We are a part
cutting
of the
people off?
history. Yeah. And
Exactly.
now you reminded me, because first I studied tourism and hospitality, and later on I studied cultural history.
Right.
And I remember, when the professor, I think it was the first lecture, and he said to all these young people over there, I was, of course, they were like my children over there, and he said, why are you studying history? That doesn't help you. There are no jobs, you're wasting time and so on. And I was there as a mom and I said, no way, go ahead. You will need this history, And also, whenever there was a lecture or I did a research or something, right? I could implement that next day on a tour. I had travelers and I could share this experience, the knowledge with them. And it was just great. The only thing that I had a problem or issue was that actually they wanted me to be more academic than and less tourist guide, But I think we are in the sector when we can bring all these two together so that we soften the historical facts. I mean, we are not story makers, right? I mean, somebody mentioned that to me the other day and I was really furious, I have to tell you. But storytellers, so that there is a historical fact and you make the story. So like you did just an hour ago with your travelers on Hago and all these stories about the monument. So there was a data, there was a name, and you made a very nice story about that. And you brought that to life, and it was like, oh, can you imagine how these people felt? I don't know, on Titanic or those ones who worked and so on. So history alive is tourist guiding, I would say.
For sure. And that's that's exactly you've touched on something I actually wanted to ask you about. So you've kind of answered my question already.
Sorry.
But no, it's great. But it is, it is something that I've noticed. I've known a lot of people who've always thought, oh well, being a tour guide is just telling stories, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like reading a book
Mm.
or telling a tale,
Oops,
and
sorry. Mm.
it's not like that. I mean, to an extent, sure, because
Mm.
you need to communicate with people, and like you said, you cannot just throw a bunch of data at them
Yeah.
and let them digest it. You need to help them along the way. So you you put it into a format that they can understand and they can
Mm.
grasp it.
Mm.
But
Mm.
there is so much more to that. You cannot just throw these stories together at random. You need
Mm.
to grab the facts. You need to dissect it, analyze
Mm.
it, and
Mm.
actually, bring it all together. Because otherwise, it's just facts disconnected
Yeah,
and joined.
yeah.
So
And
it is
sorry to
fascinating.
interrupt, but what
No, no,
it was amazing on your tour before is that there were people from Southampton and they appreciated so much that you shared those stories. You see, so it's also for the locals. that it's a
Yeah.
great experience. It's not just for me from Ljubljana, which I don't know, I am 3 hours flight away from you, or from somebody from the United States, but it's also for the local ones, right? And I think this is just amazing.
Yeah, and thank you so much for mentioning that, because it's actually something I wanted to ask you about. For for a long time, I did have this concept, right, that when we do tours is for people who are not from the local area. But I have noticed, or at least I did notice a few years back when I was working, that a lot of the people that were coming to my tours, okay, maybe not a lot, but a big percentage of the people that were coming to the tours were locals or people who live nearby, who perhaps
Yes.
knew the area already, but they
Mm,
wanted to know more. And I think since the pandemic, this is happening more
mm,
because people have been, forced to be
yeah,
in their local areas, and
true.
suddenly they've been like, oh, there is so much more.
Yeah,
So have you noticed something like that happening in Ljubljana? Like
yeah.
how is that, like, if you think of all of the tourists that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, are they mostly foreigners, or do you also have locals?
Mm, well, before the pandemic, I would say that I had around 80% foreigners and 20 were locals. And from
Okay.
these 20 locals, maybe were like 10% school children who were somehow forced to take a tour. And 10% were adults. But, they were really those ones who were 100% interested, and they wanted to say to do the tour, because they said, oh, I see all these visitors and I would like to listen to you what you're telling them or explaining them. However, during the pandemic, of course, the whole situation has changed, because visitors from around the globe, they could not come, and of course then we focused to Slovenia, and we even got some subsidies, from the government to run the tours for the locals. And I will not forget one gentleman who said, well, I live here in the city, but I'm just curious if there is anything else that you can tell me, because I would be like knowing already everything. And at the end of 1 hour and a 2 hours tour, he was like, wow, I really don't know my city. And I think this is, for a tourist guide, really amazing, because, as you said, you don't make happy just those people from far away from you, but also your neighbors. And then, for example, when we posted something, or on Instagram or on Facebook and so, then the other neighbors came and said, hey, I would like to go on a tour with you as well. Hey, do you have time? I will be retired. Can you take me and my friends and so on? So I think this is the positive part of pandemic, that
Yeah.
people, the locals, actually noticed that they don't need to travel far away to get something new, to see something new. So that they figured out that actually also the area where they live, it's gorgeous. And I think they even more respect, the place where they live. It's the same as this, what I read today in the comments, that people from Southampton were like, oh, wow, really? Oh, amazing. These kind of expressions, they really make your heart warm, right?
I agree. Like, I have also realized, I mean, it is hard when you're doing virtual tours because you don't necessarily know who's watching from where, right?
True, true,
But when
true.
you know, or at least when you have a general awareness of who's watching,
Mm,
whether from whatever, I have
mm,
also noticed that their reactions are different,
yeah,
definitely.
true.
Because for someone, for someone maybe from abroad, hearing about the story of the Titanic, for the people of Southampton, right? That's harrowing. They will think, wow, that must have
Mm,
been really hard. But
mm,
then you have the locals, and the locals can relate that to their
yes,
personal family
exactly.
histories, to everything
Yeah.
else. So it's very interesting. I'm always puzzled by how we people react to stories,
Mm,
differently depending where we are
mm,
from, or whatnot. And it's
mm,
something that I always try to be sort of aware of when doing tours, because it should be interesting for everybody. So
yeah,
I try
yeah.
to make sure that there is something there for
Mm,
anyone.
yeah.
But it
And
is definitely an interesting and and a strange adjustment, I think, in tourism,
Yeah, yeah. And
catering for the
also, I would
locals.
like to add this when you said before that you don't know who you have on tour, right? Because if we are doing a tour like we now, okay, that's a direct conversation, and more or less, I think, then we can share questions and answers and so on. But for example, when you do it in chat, you really don't know your audience. And for example, you wouldn't know that actually sister of my grandma went via Southampton to United States. So, for example, if my grandma was alive, she would appreciate your tour so much because a part of her heart was also in Southampton, you know, then she would say, oh, my sister was here. Oh, maybe she was in this part of the port, or maybe she went to this inn before she left, you know, and things like that. So it's amazing how we can bring our world together with the technology. That's what
Sure.
I'm always surprised.
It's amazing. And actually, now that you mentioned technology and stuff, I wanted to ask if you can to tell us a bit more, because I know you've been doing these tours for people in care homes, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
I mean, I already told you, I used to work in the care industry for a while doing
Yeah.
recruitment. I know the massive impact this has for
Mm,
those people.
mm.
So can you tell us how that came about, how you
Yeah.
started doing this?
Yeah. Well, actually, Lily, you know, when we started those tours, it was, I think, around 1.5 years ago with gimbal and all that stuff. Before it was more with the stick, and so it was not so professional. And then we noticed on our tours, you know, that there are some people with disabilities. I think they also mentioned to you, or they have multiple sclerosis, or they have difficulties with Alzheimer or whatever, you know. And later on, then I got some clients from United States. And they said, oh, you know, I would like to do this for my mom's friend who are in these nursing homes and so on. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's do it. So it was, there were few tours. And then I was thinking, wait a second, you know, we have nursing homes at home in my country, in Slovenia as well. What are these people doing between these four walls, you know? And then I contacted one association here, very close, and the lady who is a kind of uh, it's not a activity director, you know.
Yes,
They are
yes.
responsible for different activities, and she was like, wow, that would be excellent for my people, you know. So we ran, I think, twice or three times, just a kind of a pilot project. And at the beginning, you know, they were also surprised. Why is she doing that? Is she really moving there? You know, is she really at the moment there? And of course, it happened also that there was rain, for example, as for you today. And that I greeted maybe a neighbor or something like that. And then I remember I was at one certain point, and the lady said, oh, there was a coffee shop round the corner, you know, before we went to the theater, we went to that coffee shop. And I was like, yeah, sure, I can take you there. And there is a new building being built and so on. So they actually realized that this is fun, that this is something different than on TV news and so, right? And it was really nicely accepted. The only thing were, again, finances, as you know, it's always this with nursing homes because they need money for other activities. So somehow, you know, from the government, we got some financial support for a
Oh,
few months.
wow.
Yeah, we were lucky
Amazing.
ones. So it was over winter. We got some financial support. And then we said, okay, if government gives us financial support, then we can also continue with these tours. And now finally, we will apply for some grants that they will accept these online tours, and there will be also some companies who are going to finance those tours. So it's really, you know, because they have a great feedback from people in those nursing homes. One called me today morning, and she said, my people are asking me, when are we going to have another online tour? Why
Oh,
is nothing
that's
organized?
amazing.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, just tell me, when would you like, which date, and so on. And she said, yeah, they are pushing me every morning. Tomorrow, for example, Lily, because I published one book about fairy tales and literature stories in Ljubljana, right during this pandemic. Actually, we started it before, but we finished now. And then I also contacted a school in the hospital, because there are lots of children in the hospital. Unfortunately, they cannot go to school, and of course they have also cultural classes, sport days, and so on. So last year, at the end of the school year, I ran for them one tour in Ljubljana, and tomorrow they are celebrating 70th anniversary, and they asked me to run a tour again because we had so
Oh,
much fun before. Yes, so I'm doing that tomorrow at 10 a.m. And of course, I've got also some sponsors, so that we're going to have some quiz, that there will be some fun with children. I got also some books that we are going to give as a kind of a prize winner. So I'm already now looking forward, and it's going to be all online. They are actually,
amazing.
just maybe 1.5 miles away from here. But of course, they cannot go because they have to stay in the hospital. They have to do everything what children at school they have to do. And they are going to have a cultural day, and that's how they're going to celebrate their 70th anniversary. Yeah. So a lot of very nice stories. I agree with you. I think, before you also talked about the impact tourism, meaningful tourism. Believe it or not, I think that now tourism got much more impact than before, because, for example, before we needed to have people, we got people who had time. It was a kind of a luxury activity, who had time, who had money to travel, and also abilities, so that they were not disabled and so on, right? Because traveling it's a stress, it's not for everyone.
Oh,
Let's face it. And now, with this technology, we are coming actually to every corner. You just need to have good internet. So I think that tourism got now more meaning, and it's more inclusive than it was ever. Yeah,
that's it.
so yeah, so
No,
that's
it's that's the thing that wakes me up in the morning, right? Like
yeah.
before I started Travelusion Tours, I had the absolute privilege to work for an organization that dealt with a lot of people from underprivileged backgrounds, whether
Oh,
it was economic situations that were, not great, homeless people,
yeah.
people with learning difficulties,
Mm,
people who may have been refugees or
yeah.
migrants or adapting to a new community altogether.
Mm,
And
mm,
when you work with those people, you realize really how many barriers there are in
yeah.
our world
True.
for ordinary citizens to
Yes.
just access
Exactly.
different points of life.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it really resonated with me. I know a lot of people that just can't travel for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be, doesn't have to be a pandemic. This is what I tell
No.
people. You
Yeah.
could be sick. You may not be able to leave a country for political reasons.
Yeah.
You may not
True.
be able to afford it because
Yeah.
you may
It's
have a big
expensive.
family or,
Yeah.
it
Exactly.
is expensive. So
Mm,
why should you not be able to take part
yeah.
in
Yeah.
that experience?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something that when I started doing this, for myself, for my company, I was like, this matters. I want to be
True.
able to represent these people.
Yeah.
Um, so when I knew that you were also doing similar things, I was like, yes,
Yes.
we
True.
got this.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
do this
Yeah.
because I genuinely think, it's a beautiful profession that has the capability to change so many
Yeah.
people's minds and
Yeah.
hearts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm glad that we can share that with others.
Definitely,
For
definitely.
sure.
Yeah, tourism is generally like a kind of a engine of peacekeeping, So, I mean, it's difficult to say that in this situation now that is going in Ukraine, but we have to know that there were wars and they are still going wars also in the other parts of the world. And for example, I agree with you, for example, that we support now more our colleagues down there. Because, for example, I remember when we had war, in ex-Yugoslavia, for us, tourism stopped 100%. There was no way, no other way to communicate with the rest of the world because we didn't have this technology. And now, for example, our colleague from Ukraine, she can still run. Well, there are a few, there is not just only one, right? They can still run those tours. They give us information, what's going on, how they are surviving their days, because they are literally surviving from hour to hour. And and this is all thanks to technology. And we can still support them, I mean, of course it's difficult, but still we are in contact with them. If I'm honest, I think that's very positive for them as well, that they hear that we are supporting them, that we care for them. And this is something that makes your heart really warm.
For sure. I mean, I 100% agree. And, I know I've talked about this before on social media, so I'm not going to preach the same speech again. But, you're absolutely right. It's not just the war in Ukraine. The world, unfortunately, is ridden with conflict almost 24/7, which is heartbreaking. I just hate thinking that there is people that is in this situation. But we have caused this. Humanity has caused this, and we all need to be responsible for it in one way or another. So showing solidarity, speaking up, putting certain people on the spotlight, that is a way we can all help. So that's the reason why I've always been, talking about this, like, hey, do you know this person? Go support this person. Help them out, because they are in a tough situation. I may not be, I don't know, living in luxury or whatever, but I don't have bombs falling on my, on my house. That's a luxury. We don't realize it, but that's luxury. So I've been very, very happy to see how positive and supportive the general tour guiding community and tourism community has been.
Tourism community,
For this, it was the same similarly to a lot of our colleagues in Morocco. While Morocco was in lockdown for such a long time, and we didn't have any tourists. And obviously, like our friend Ahmed was saying that day, Morocco primarily lives from tourism, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So if you cut this from someone's livelihood, then that's thousands of lives that can't carry on.
Yeah.
So it's always good finding these bridges, these bonds, and bringing people together. And like you said, technology has definitely been great for that. But I think it's also something that is older than technology, and that really relates to what you were saying right at the beginning of this thing of, hey, I want to meet those people. I think when you're a tour guide, part of you wants to be part of a community, no matter how big or small it is.
True.
And I think that's really shown during these times. All the support from different people, different places. It's just been amazing.
Yeah. And I will never forget, we had once a Zoom meeting with voyageurs. I don't know if you remember that, but there was one lady and she said, you have to know that I am living alone and I have not got a chance to talk to anyone for the last 4 weeks because we were all in lockdown, So it's like, really, isolation like that, you just can't believe, people already forgot to talk, so to say. And then thanks to technology, there was somebody somewhere that they could share their experiences and stories, and just to be in contact with them, even though they had to prepare their own coffee or cup of tea, but at least there was something. At least there was something. Yeah.
It's it's remarkable. Well, I'm becoming aware of the time, and there's so many things I wanted to ask you. But going back to your city specifically, what can you tell us about Ljubljana as a city that you think a lot of tourists don't think about when they come traveling to Slovenia? Like, why should they come to Ljubljana? Because
Yeah,
I am thankful to all of the people that I know all of these places around the world, and
yeah,
through
yeah.
history you get to know places. But when I tell people, oh, you should go to Slovenia, Slovenia is a beautiful
And they were
country.
like, what? Why? What for?
Yeah, exactly. So what can you tell us about your city that
Yeah.
makes it so special?
Yeah. Look, I just now flipped my camera and I'm sitting in one of the coffee shops here in the park. Here is a playground, so that means that also parents can enjoy their coffee or tea while their children are playing. Then I am now showing you the old part of the city, which is somehow squeezed below the castle hill. So there is the castle on the top of
Look
the
at that.
hill, and then medieval city below, I mean, between the castle and the river.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you notice from the architecture that this is a kind more, let's say, Baroque or neo-Baroque, right? Because it
Mm-hmm.
was a very flourishing period, like 1600s, 1700s. It's a trade part between Italy and Austria. So we have influences of both worlds, so to say. I always say that we took the best of all worlds. So look, now I am sitting outside enjoying my coffee. So it would be the same as somewhere in Italy. But on the other hand, I think since we were a part of this Habsburg's monarchy, you know, it's a nice order. So for example, it's very nice
Yes.
and clean, neat. It is safe. We have a lot of exchange students also from UK and other countries, because they feel really safe. You can go wherever you want, so to say. And on the other hand, we are also Slavic people, and Slavic people generally are more melancholic, so we are in a slightly different way. So I would say that a kind of a mix of everything. That's what I wanted to share. So a kind of a mix of everything, a mix of all these Germanic influences, Mediterranean influences, Slavic influences, make it more charming, right?
Sure.
Um, Easygoing, yet organized. The other day, somebody asked me, what about the accessibility? And I was like, yeah, Ljubljana got two prizes on accessibility. So that means that whatever it's built, whatever it's done, it's somehow accessible more or less to everyone. So we are European capital, or capital of one of the European countries. We are a member of EU, so that there are some standards that we definitely have to meet. And I think that all that together makes it as a pleasant place. And we are not too big. For example, the place where I sit now, it's actually just 5 minutes from the city hall, from Three Bridges. So that means that you just go and walk, or I take a bicycle. I don't drive a car anymore, only when I go and visit my parents, right? Because they are living outside of the city. But otherwise, here you don't need, because it's a car-free zone. So it's actually very human being friendly city. So
Good.
that's why. Yeah, it's a perfect for a weekend escape for everyone from UK.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is what I try to tell people, but
Thank you,
obviously,
thank you.
it's easier when they hear it from someone like you,
Yeah,
because then they
true.
are like, oh, okay, she's
Yeah,
not just making stuff up. I've seen it with my
yeah,
eyes.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it is that convergence of cultures that you speak
Mm-hmm.
about. It's
Mm.
something that I've always been mesmerized by. I used to work with a girl that was from Slovenia a few years back, and it was like you said. It was just, to me, it was fascinating as a cultural historian, because I could recognize that the Mediterranean influence, like
Yes,
her looks were very sort of Mediterranean,
yes,
Italian, Greek
yes,
sort of thing.
yes.
Her manners were just very calm, very
Hmm.
Central European,
Yes,
it reminded me a lot of my friends from Berlin, who are always like
right.
very polite, very neat, very organized, and stuff. But like you said, there is something to Slavic countries and the area of the Balkans that I like how you've described it as melancholy. My best friend,
Yeah.
he's half Serbian, so I'm very
Okay.
familiar
Then you know.
with
Yeah.
with a lot of these things. And there is, yeah, this kind of like contemplation.
Yeah.
I always say that every single person I've known from that general area, and particularly the old area of Yugoslavia, everyone is a bit of a philosopher. Everyone has that.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you see
We
what
all
I
have
mean?
right. We all have right. Yes, yes.
Yeah, like
Listen to me. Listen to me.
there is always a desire to not just exchange what goes through your mind, but
Mm,
also to understand
yeah.
the world around you.
True.
And I
True.
think it's because, there is so many
Yeah.
different places
Mm,
and people coming together.
yeah.
You have to be like that to let that
Mm,
work,
yeah.
because otherwise, I mean,
Yeah, open-minded, really being open-minded, because my perspective is not your perspective, right? And our perspective is not the perspective of somebody, I don't know, from Italy or from Sicily. So it's really worth listening to each other. So it's not just talking, but listening and understanding, I think that the Indian proverb says that you have to walk in somebody's shoes for 7 days in order to understand him or her. So if we manage to do something like this, it's great. Of course, it is easier if you live in the area where all these different cultures meet, because you are somehow forced. Because if you're isolated, let's say that if you live on one island, of course they don't mix so much, right? But if you live in the city like we are here 2 hours and a half from Venice, for example, 3 hours from Vienna, 1 hour from Zagreb. So it's really everything close together. The trade is very intense, and now also exchange students. That's why I like that so much, because they bring their world to our world. And that's why our world is getting richer.
yeah.
So this is the advantage. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And then they say that, I don't know, Lily, if you heard that, but they say where the trade is intense, that's great also for the art.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Yeah, yeah. So that's why we say that art, trade, and agriculture were the three most important activities in Ljubljana.
That's amazing. All of
Yeah.
those things I love. So no, I mean, Ljubljana has been on my list of places to go for a really, really long time. The issue is that,
Really,
you
really
have this
waiting to
list
host you soon.
for sure, but you know how it goes. You have all of these lists, all of these places.
Yes,
It's
true.
sometimes hard, but it's been
Yeah,
on my list for a really long time. And it is funny because, like you said, people think, I think normally when most ordinary people think about traveling, they think of big names like
yeah,
London,
yeah.
Paris,
True, true,
Berlin, things
true,
like that.
true.
But I've always been a huge advocate to go somewhere smaller.
Yeah,
Like,
true.
you will find, okay, maybe not the same quantity of
Yes,
stuff,
yes.
but there is always quality and something
Mm,
worthwhile no matter where you are. So,
mm.
I'm glad that you've said that, because it's really important for people to realize that it doesn't matter. We're not necessarily saying come to Ljubljana and stay for 2 months or
Yeah.
2 years. We're just saying come and see it for yourself, and you'll
True.
be better for it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but as time is starting to run out, this is something that I always like asking people about, tour guides, to give us an insight into their world. Can you tell us of your happiest memory of all times as a tour guide? Like a day that maybe when things are not going so well, you think of, I remember that person or that tour, and that was
Hmm.
amazing, and that
Mm.
kind of like allows you to carry on. Do you have such a
Yeah.
memory?
Well, actually, Lily, I have quite a few, but now since we also talked about the pandemic and also this war, for example, and how we all live in different bubbles in different parts of the world, I remember the first year of pandemic, a lady who came to Ljubljana with a group of Germans from the northern part of Germany. I thought that lots of groups will be cancelled, because it was 2020 and we didn't know what's going to happen. But they still kept coming. Of course, we all wore masks and so on, but still they were here. and they stayed in Ljubljana for 5 days. You know, we did also some day trips out of the city. And at the end, the night before, I mean, when we greeted and we said goodbye, thank you for coming, a very nice, friendly lady approached me and she said to me, I am so thankful to you. And I was like, yes, you know, nice, fine. And she said, you know what? You brought me to a completely new world. At home, my friends are dying. Everybody is sick of this COVID. We are talking only about this. And now, since I spent these 5 days in Slovenia, I completely forgot about those worries back at home. And as you said, Alleluia. And I will never forget that. Actually, she expressed something that every traveler experiences, you know, but sometimes we are just not aware of that. So that's why we need to travel, even if it's just online. For example, for me, it was great today because I was in Southampton. You know, I have a photographer from Ljubljana. She makes really perfect photographies, and she didn't know what I'm doing, so she saw me with the gimbal and a camera in the city, and she said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing these tours." So she joined, and now almost every day she's reporting to me where she was, you know.
Amazing.
So I mean, of course in person is better, but also if online, if it doesn't work, you always go to another world and takes you out of maybe your problems, out of your everyday routine. And we tourist guides, maybe we are not even aware how much important this is, because people have their worries at home, these are the other ones, and when they are on tour, they have a moment when they can forget this. So that's what really I experienced, and I will never forget this lady anymore. I mean, I know exactly how she looked, and I remember her glasses, and there were tears coming from her eyes. So it was really a blessing.
No, you know, that's like you said, you know, traveling for me, it's always been a bit like that. I always thought not like escapism, but you know, a way of giving you perspective. You know, sometimes all you need is a little bit of distance,
True.
not so much not to
Not too
worry, but
much. Yeah.
to be able to see things from a different
Yeah.
perspective, right? And like you said, even if it's just through a screen, it is transporting you. I always say that traveling is like reading a really good book, but you also experience it 4D.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
you
True.
smell, you eat it, you everything.
Exactly.
And you know, people always tell me, because when I go to places, I mean, I'm also a food historian, so for me, eating and smelling things is
Of
super
course.
important because it allows me to understand how people think and how they go
Yeah.
about their day-to-day life. And my aunt is always like, you're always eating when you go traveling. You're always
Yeah.
eating. And I'm like, yes, because then when I'm home, I can sit and remember that
Yes.
thing that I have in that place and that memory, because it's, you know, tied to our senses, it regenerates that
Yeah.
feeling of
Mm.
transportation, of
Yes.
a moment of peace. And it's
Mm.
something that I think particularly that's what I said earlier in my tour, you know, that's the transition between becoming a tourist and becoming a traveler.
Traveler.
When
Mm-hmm.
you make that connection and you understand it's the magic really of traveling.
Mm.
It
Mm.
transforms you as a person,
Yeah.
and it's so powerful. So I completely understand why this woman would be with you forever, because that day you were her hero. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you changed
And
her
she was
life.
also my hero.
Well, of
She was
course,
also, yeah.
for sure, because
Yeah.
you know, having that human connection with someone
Mm.
is just so powerful.
Mm.
And honestly, I've said it so many times, but I've never had any other job that allowed me to connect to people in the
Yeah.
same way that I do here.
Mm.
And
True.
I don't know if it's the same for you. I
Yeah.
suspect it is.
Yes,
But
it is.
it is one of the most powerful experiences in life,
Yeah. True.
hands down.
True.
Um,
True. True.
yeah. Well,
That's why we are
we are
sticking
now
to it.
approaching the end of the tour, so I have one last question for you. and this is where we will leave it, folks, because, we all have things to do. But, now that you've sort of, you've been in this industry for a really, really long time, and obviously you've acquired all sorts of knowledge, you've gone through different stages of tourism, from back at the time where you couldn't even think that we would be having this conversation, to now you are changing the lives of people through the internet. I know that a lot of new tour guides and people who are thinking about their prospects in life, sometimes wonder what could I do? What should I know? What advice? So do you have any advice for people who may be thinking, who may look up to you and think, I want to be like her? How do I do that? Any advice for those people? That would be great.
Yeah. First of all, of course, I would suggest them to just do it, because you know that I adore tourist guiding, and I would like that really everybody is a tourist guide, so that gets experiences like this. However, we need to be honest that the time we invest in research and then interpretation, guiding, the time that we invest in promotion, because nowadays this is also a very important, it doesn't mean that financially will give you that reward. And I think that everybody needs to be aware of that. Then secondly, you need to be very patient. You need to have this compassion for people. Because in tourism, it's not like being 90% good. You have to be 100% good, especially in person, I would say. Online, maybe it's slightly easier because you can get returning travelers, but in person, it's not so easy. So you really need to focus. I always say, if you're not tired at the end of the tour, that means that you haven't done a good job, So psychology is very important, very attentive, compassion and all that stuff. So, and again, of course, this is for people who like continuous learning, studying. You never know enough. There is always something that you can study, that you can read. Because travelers, they are not all interested just in history. Some of them are interested in plants, the other ones in insects and all that stuff. And of course, if they will tell you in advance, I'm interested in insects, then you will say, okay, you know what, I'm not so good, so maybe it's better that you go with my colleague. But it can happen that they are maybe a part of the group, that they are with you, and if they ask you a question about that, you still need to satisfy them, somehow make them happy, right? So these kind of daily challenges, you never know what challenge comes with the next tour. So they need to be ready for that. But otherwise, I think they will just enjoy it.
For sure. No, those are nuggets of wisdom. That thing that you said about if you finish a tour and you don't feel tired, oh my God. I've spent so much time explaining to people why tour guiding is exhausting, right? Because it's not just the fact that you are on the move, right? Even if you're just in one site, you're still showing one thing, showing another, and it doesn't matter if you're with a camera or in face-to-face,
true.
Pointing, telling, and not just that, walking, breathing, being aware of your surroundings, and remembering everything and communicating that.
Yes.
Takes a lot of energy.
answering questions. Yeah, all this is so much adrenaline. It's like an athlete coming through the finish line.
Yes, like it's really funny because every time before I go on tour, I don't know if it happens to you, but I've always been like that. It doesn't matter what tour it is, doesn't matter if I've done it 3,000 times or if it's my first one.
Yeah.
I always get super nervous, right? I have this moment of, oh my God. And people look at me like, but
what's going on? Yeah, you've done it so many times.
1,000 times. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's still tension, not like negative tension, but it's
a positive one.
Yeah, it's like your body is preparing to like do this activity that requires just so much. And,
True.
I think that's one of the reasons why I like having these conversations, and for people to hear it from people like you. It's just so much goes on, and particularly on a face-to-face tour as well, you need to be
Yes.
aware of everyone's safety, make
Yes,
sure that everyone is
exactly.
happy. Oh my God, I remember one of the last tours I had before the pandemic. It was a big cruise ship, in the
Okay.
summer,
Yes.
the German cruise ships that go all the way through the Mediterranean and then into the Danube and the Volga and whatnot. They are packed with people.
True.
It was a really hot day. And this lady, she was just taking a picture, and she's laid it back. And thankfully she didn't hurt herself,
Yeah.
but the camera broke and a little bit of glass, it cut her. So
Oh,
there was blood everywhere, and everyone was, when you see
screaming. Yeah,
blood,
of course. It's like,
you expect something bad. So suddenly I had 50 people around me going like,
Mamma
oh my God,
mia.
there is blood and whatnot.
Yes, yes,
And,
yes.
it takes a lot. And obviously this is an extreme example.
Yeah, but still, it happened. It
But
happened.
exactly. So I always tell people, it's not just sunshine and rainbows,
No,
telling,
no,
singing
no,
nice stories and whatnot.
no,
There is
no.
a lot that goes into it.
Yeah,
So you need to prepare mentally and physically.
true,
It's
true.
very demanding,
Mm,
and I think that's why a lot of people sometimes give up because they just
yeah.
can't.
Yeah,
It's
it's too
intense.
much. It's too
It's
much. Yeah.
intense.
It's easier to go in the office and work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But those ones who fall in love with tourist guiding, we are here.
Exactly. And we will always be here. So
True,
that's
true, true.
that's the thing. Well, we're literally now coming to the end. I really don't want to stop talking, but
Thank
we
you,
have
Lily.
to.
Thank you,
Uh,
Lily.
no, thank you so much for being here. Thank you everyone as well on the chat for saying hi. And I've seen as well a lot of our colleagues. So thank you so
Yeah,
much for your
nice,
support. This
nice.
is what we were talking about earlier, the importance of all of us being together. But
Mm,
no, honestly, it means so much to me that you were here today, sharing your wisdom, your beautiful city, and your stories. These are the moments I live for because they genuinely fill me with joy. So thank you for filling me with joy today because you were also on my tour, which genuinely just lit me up. When I saw your little name on the screen, I was like, I thought
yes, yes,
or
yes,
like I literally had to like stay composed, like
yes.
it's fine.
It was so nice. I enjoyed it so much. So thank you for delivering it, Lily. It's
Thank
great.
you.
And of course, thank you for inviting me to
My
be a
pleasure.
part of your channel, to be a part of all the colleagues that you invited for the interview.
Thank you so much. I adore you, and honestly, I hope we can meet very, very soon.
True.
Because it would genuinely, it would be so great.
We
And
need to
once
work
again,
it.
thank you everybody on the chat. Thank you everyone who's watching this later. It really, really means the world to me when I come
Mm,
back to Instagram and see that however many people have
yes,
watched it again. I'm like,
yes, yes. Yeah,
yay!
yeah, 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 yeah. Great.
It's nice. But that's all for today, folks. Thank you so much again for being here, and you all have a lovely evening
You
and take
too.
care.
Ciao. Bye
Bye.
bye. Good night. Bye
Bye.
bye.